So chapter 21 is basically all concerned about your security and talks about symmetric encryption and asymmetric encryption and stuff like that. So the focus basically will be on the use of encryption when transmitting data over the network. That's what we will be talking about all in this particular chapter. So basically, how does the process starts in case of an encryption? You're supposed to know that according to the examination point of view. It starts with the plain text, whatever form it has. Okay. For example, if you're talking about you enter your username or the password, we consider that also plain text. This is what we're referring to. Now, obviously, in order to encrypt it, we will be using an encryption algorithm, okay, which will be making those keys. We're talking about the private key and the public key. So once the product of the encryption is basically ciphertext, okay, which will be transmitted to the recipient, and obviously once the recipient receives it, it will be decrypted, which is known as decryption. Algorithm will be applied on it to basically produce the original text, which is back to the plain text. So this is what goes on. Now, the reason why we call this basically symmetric in the encryption or symmetric data transfer is basically if you put a line over here, you would see is that they're quite symmetrical. That's why we call it symmetrical. Okay, you see if I put a line over here, plain text gets encrypted by a key which is the private key and converts in ciphertext. And if you look over here, I have a plain text. Again, by entering up that particular key, I can decrypt it. So this is why we actually refer it to as a symmetric key encryption, where there is one key, and using that one particular key, you can transfer it. There are a number of security concerns that could be there related to the transmission. Confidentiality. Obviously, only the intended recipient should be able to decrypt the ciphertext, because again, there could be a possibility that while you are transferring the key, someone else intercepts, someone else gets it, hackers get it. Obviously, will always be a concern. Authenticity. The receiver must be certain who sent the ciphertext. Okay, you have to be sure who is sending it. Integrity. The ciphertext must not be modified during transmission. Okay, so we have to be careful about that. That if you're sending any data or whatever, it should not be modified in any way. Non-repudiation, neither sender nor receiver should be able to deny involvement in the transmission. This basically means that once you have sent the data, okay, it should be sent. So neither the sender nor the receiver should be able to deny involvement in transmission. Okay, the process should go on. Availability, nothing should happen to prevent the receiver from receiving the data. Actually, the confidentiality basically means what? Their concern arises because a message could be intercepted during transmission. So obviously there's a point of confidentiality over here. Okay, the contents basically could be read by anyone, hacker or something. And if this information is more about financial, obviously that could be a much more concern as far as banking is concerned. Okay, the concern about integrity basically means that the transmission might be interfered, okay, and or it might be accidentally corrupted during. So integrity could obviously be deliberately done or might be done due to accidental. So whenever you have a transmission of data, you can have both of the problems that might occur. There are two kinds of encryption methods that probably you do know, you might have studied it. Symmetric, I just talked about it, okay? And then you have this asymmetric encryption. Both methods are there. Symmetric key encryption basically is where you just have one key which will be used to encrypt and decrypt the data. Okay, the key that you have will be shared by the sender and the receiver of the message. So it's obviously one of the simplest, best known technique, okay, to encrypt and decrypt the data. Because the algorithm behind symmetric encryption is less complex, Obviously, if it's less complex, and the algorithm is shorter as well, it will obviously execute faster, okay, since it's simple. The plain text is encrypted using a key, and the same key is used at receiving and decrypt the received ciphertext. The host in this communication process would have received the key through external means, which means could be emailed or could be sent through any other way. So widely used methods of the encryption methods are the following. These are the examples. Okay, these are the examples of encryption algorithms that are used. So advantages, obviously, if you were supposed to write about the advantages, it's simpler and faster, and obviously two parties exchange the key in a secure way. The disadvantage, obviously, of a symmetric cryptography is that if key is leaked to the intruder, the message can be easily changed, and this is considered as a risk factor. This is one, and obviously a very important disadvantage about symmetric key encryption. So again, another diagram to explain you the same thing. This is why now most of the browsers are using asymmetric encryption, not symmetric encryption. The only reason because of the disadvantage that we have. Now, what is asymmetric encryption? Well, it's also called a public key encryption. It works in the reverse manner of symmetric encryption. Basically, it works on the concept that now you have two keys. We call these keys as a private key and a public key. They are used for decrypting. And then these keys that you have, the public key is mathematically related to the private key, but given sufficient key length, it is computationally impractical to derive private key from public key. So basically, your public key and private key are basically mathematically related to each other. Okay, so this is made for this, and this is made for this. I'll just explain it. Asymmetric encryption basically works how way. This type of encryption is relatively new as compared to symmetric encryption. Okay, and is also known as a public key cryptography. You should know that. Is more secure than the symmetric encryption as it uses two keys for the process. Another property, another discussion. I'll always explain them in points so that you can remember them. That's the best way to learn any particular topic. The public key used for encryption is available to anyone, but private key is not. Okay, so basically the difference now is that we have a key which is available to anyone, but at the same time we have a private key which is not disclosed to anyone. Now, how does it work? This encryption method is used everyday communication with the internet nowadays. So when a message is encrypted using public key, it can only be decrypted using a private key. That's the point. So when you send a message and the message basically is encrypted with a public key, you also will have generated is a private key, and this private key will be used to decrypt it. So you have two keys. Digital certificates are basically a client-server model. You might have heard of it. So they are using the same method of public keys. We will talk about digital certificates soon, right after this. So what digital certificates are, okay, and what digital signatures are as well. The drawback of this encryption is that it takes more time. Yeah, obviously you have much more complex algorithms. So this actually does slow down your browser when you're doing it. One of the disadvantage. And these are the RSA, DSA are the common examples. We're not supposed to know about it. We're not supposed to know about the functioning of these. Just keep the examples in your mind. That's it. So digital signatures and digital certificates. Well, using asymmetric encryption, if you're talking about it, okay, let's talk about digital signatures. So obviously, an individual can encrypt message with a private key and send it to many recipients who have the corresponding public key, and therefore decrypt the message. The approach would not be used if the content of the message was confidential. So, however, it could be used if it was important to verify who the sender was. Only the sender has the private key, and the public keys only work with that one specific private key. That's the important thing. Okay. Therefore, using this with the message has a digitally signature identifying the sender. So if we talk about the entire concept of asymmetric encryption, where we have a public key and the person, we only that person who is receiving that particular data, okay, in case of an asymmetric encryption, who has the private key, this entire concept basically means that having that private key means that you have a digital signature identifying the sender. So the sender can be authenticated with the private key. So this is what digital signatures actually is. So it's somehow this is quite the same thing. Well, this disadvantage of this method of applying digital signature is associated with the encryption of the whole of the message. The alternate to I am explaining. The disadvantage in this method of applying a digital signature is that it is associated with encryption of the whole of the message. So obviously, this is a bit of a disadvantage. Your entire message basically has this signature. So since the entire message will have this signature, it will take more time for the message to get decrypted. So if it's a long message, it will take more time. So for that, they came up with an alternate way that why not define uniquely digest, give your digital this message as a particular number, assign a unique number, which is known as a digest. How would it help? Now, every message, if it's given a unique number, it could act as a pointer, and this will help us to increase the processing. So this digest, which is attached to the message, it will be easy for that particular message to be decrypted. Okay, so private key is used as signature for this digest. This speeds up the process of confirming the sender identity. So overall, they had to speed it up. Initially, when this came in, your browsers became very slow. So this is why they had to come with cryptographic one-way hash function, in which, I repeat again, a unique number was generated for every message, which was known as a digest, which was attached to this. Obviously, it was very faster way than basically going through the entire message. So now it's been much better now. Right. So digital signature is a mechanism that is used to verify that a particular digital document, message, or transaction is authentic. Obviously, if the digital signature is over there, we can actually confirm that it is authentic. There are various third-party companies that also do it. Initially, there were VeriSign. When you went to e-commerce-based websites, you would always see a VeriSign. VeriSign would basically digital certify every the website selling it. Okay, and they would issue the digital certificates. Okay, so if you now it's not that common because everyone is creating these e-commerce based websites and people are not particular about it. But if you go to banking websites, they're always verified by VeriSign. You might see the logo over there. It provides a receiver the guarantee that the message was actually generated by the sender and was not modified by third party. This is what a digital certificate does for us. Okay, so digital certificate can provide the added assurance to the original identity and the status, okay, that it has been acknowledged by the consent of the signer. Authentication. Obviously, signatures can be used to authenticate the source of the messages. Integrity. Confidence that the message has not been altered during the transmission. This is what your digital signatures will help us with. Okay. Non-repudiation. Obviously, or more specifically, non-repudiation of the region is more important, especially aspect of digital signatures. By this property and the entity that has been signed, some information cannot at later time deny having signing it, which means obviously if someone has confirmed it, you can't say afterwards that no, it was not signed by us, it was not sent by us. So basically it's related to the authentication as well. Okay, once it has been sent, you cannot say no, we're not sending it, because that's the way it should go. You've sent it, you've sent it. So it helps basically fraudulent party to make valid signatures. So basically, digital signatures, then what's digital certificate? Obviously, just like in practical life, you have certificates that uniquely identify you yourself, your passwords, your driving license. These are certificates that identify every individual. So when you go online, there should be some identity for everyone, that who you are. Okay, you have to distinguish yourself from someone else. So this is why digital certificates basically are created. And these digital certificates, like I said, they are basically issued by, recognized either by government authorities or registered authorities. They do it, and they basically issue these certificates to individuals or users who are on the internet. Now, obviously, there are obviously benefits, lots of benefit. It contains permission to identify and trace the owner. Okay, to identify and contact the issuing authority. Okay, if you have a digital certificate, it will help you to do so. It is designed to be tamper resistant and difficult to counterfeit. Obviously, it's very, very difficult. Even if you have to do it, it will take a lot of time using any algorithm. Authority that can revoke the identification card at any time. Okay, so obviously, if the card is misused or stolen, you can cancel it through a digital certificate. It can be checked for revocation by contacting the issuing authority. So any authority who has issued a digital certificate, it can revoke it as well. It can cancel it as well. It can stop it as well. Now let's look at basically how do you obtain a digital certificate. Now this is important for us to understand. Let's have a look at this. So basically, when you go for online shopping or whatever, how do you obtain a digital certificate? For example, you have person A, okay, so person A basically has a public key. The person A will send the public key to the certification authority. Okay, the certification authority, such as VeriSign, will basically do what? Will use the person's A public key. Okay, this diagram is from your book. Frankly, most of the content is there from your book. That's why I'm just explaining you all that. Person A's public key and the certification authority's private key, both of these will be produced in order to create a digital certificate. So a digital certificate creation process will be initiated, and person A's digital certificate will be made and will be given to the person. It's just like when you go and apply for your passport, you have to provide with certain documents and all that. Once you give them to that particular authority, they will issue one. Once you have it, you can now actually use that to basically go on website and do any sort of transaction that you may want to. And these servers who basically are either dealing with financial transactions or whatever, since they will know that you have a digital certificate which has been issued by these authentic authority, they will obviously let you get in and carry out with any sort of transaction that you may want to. Now, this entire process is all done just like it's happened in our physical world. This is the same way digital certificates are created, right? Are you with me? Is it clear? I'm just talking to myself.
Yes, yes.
Right. Okay. SSL and TLS. You might have heard of both of these. These are again your secure shell protocol layer, and TLS. TLS is a new form of SSL. There's slight modification in case of your TLS. We can mostly consider over here on SSL basically. So basically, it's an interface between the application and the TCP uses protocol. You might remember TCP till now. In the absence of security protocol, that TCP services an application using the port number. The combination of IP and port number is called a socket. Okay, remember this word, please. The combination of IP address and the port number, okay, is called a socket. Port number basically we mean is the switch port number from where it's coming from. The combination of both of these basically is known as a socket. When the sockets when the secure socket layer protocol is implemented, it functions as additional layer between TCP in the transport layer and the application layer. If you do remember, if I've discussed with you the OSI model layers, where I probably did discuss with you is please do not throw the sausage pizza away. Okay, the application layer, the transport layer. Do you remember all that? Uske darmiyan mein we also discussed was these different layers. So I'm talking about the two layers we're talking about over here. Okay, between the TCP in the transport layer and the application layer. The transport layer is responsible for transmission of data. The application layer is basically where different applications like SMTP or like your other email editors or your web browser are working. They come in the application layer. Transport layer is just to transport. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that the secure socket layer, the SSS layer, is implemented. It functions as an additional layer between both of these. So while the data is being transmitted and is being transmitted towards the application layer, in between you have the SSS layer that basically works in the middle of both of these layers. So this is why we also call SSL a protocol as well, secure shell. Okay, it's one of the protocol layer that helps your data to be transferred in a secure manner. Okay, you might have seen the padlocks at the bottom of the browser. एक छोटा सा padlock होता है. Sometimes the padlock is open, sometimes the padlock is closed. If the padlock is basically closed, it means that the communication that is being taking place from your computer to the web server, it is basically going through a secure shell. This is what secure shell, you can recognize secure shell in your web browser. You might have seen that padlock at the very footer of your browser. This is what it means. When the SSL protocol is in place, the application protocol HTTP becomes HTTPS. Okay, so obviously, if you have SSL protocol in place, you will be saying HTTPS. Okay, now mostly nowadays, your web servers demand your website to have SSL. For example, even if you go to my website ssime.com, you might see that it's saying nowadays not secure. It doesn't mean it's not secure, it is secure. But what they want is that I should implement SSL protocol. I should apply this particular protocol layer over there. So it's a bit lengthy process that I have to do. Many of the websites are not doing it. Even if your website is not taking information from the user, the web servers nowadays still want your website to have HTTPS. Although it doesn't make a difference, frankly speaking. I don't know why still they're doing so. Because the only reason you need HTTPS is why? Because if I'm taking information from the user, if I'm not taking any information from the user, and if my website is just displaying text and videos, then there's no point of HTTPS. You get my point? So HTTP is used just to display information. HTTPS is used when your information from the user goes to the server, and while it goes to the server, we should make sure of the fact that it does not go into wrong hand. So, but anyway, I just told you now majority of the web servers will demand that SSL protocol is in place. If it's not in place, you will see at the top HTTP की जो URL है उसके साथ लिखा आ रहा होगा not secure. उसका ये मतलब frankly नहीं होगा कि the website is not secure. इसका मतलब ये है कि उस पे SSL protocol apply नहीं हुआ हुआ. Did you get the point? Okay, just wanted to make this point clear. This is what basically it means. Malware, well, what malware मैंने इधर यहाँ discuss नहीं किया, but we can generally discuss it. So this is what we have. We have discussed this. Digital signature certificates, SSL and TSL malware. Well, you know about it. अगर discuss कर लेते हैं. Viruses, obviously, viruses are there that would replicate themselves. Okay, they are there to basically disrupt the normal functioning of an operating system or any application software. Worms basically do what? They basically again they replicate themselves. They are mostly used on network environments to clog the network so that a network cannot perform properly. This is what it happens. Okay, you might have heard of what you call that, denial of service attack. मैंने पहले भी बात की होगी. Do you remember what DOS is? Denial of service attack. I hope you're not sleeping. And are you listening, all of you? Remember what DOS attack was? Can someone?
Yes, sir.
What was DOS attack? And why am I relating worms with DOS attack? DOS attack क्या था? Denial of service. Denial of service of what? Server. What is the server doing? In fact, what is your processor doing right now? In your personal computer, in personal laptop, your processor is performing a particular task. It's performing services. A server does the same thing. A server is performing services. Now, if you send too many processes to the server, the processor will not be able to complete its job. Now, this concept of denial of service basically came with regard to the servers. If you send a lot of commands to the server that the server can't handle, it will say denial of service. Now, denial of service attack is done through creating viruses and worms in such a way that you clog the ports of the processor in such a way it cannot do its job. It says, fine, I cannot process any longer, and I will not work for the next command. So that's what denial of service attack is. Logic bombs basically are created when some condition is met. For example, any particular condition. For example, when I click on a document, it should be triggered, or when a particular time comes in, it gets triggered. That's what logic bombs is. Okay, logic bombs can be embedded into documents, and they can be emailed to anyone. Okay, most of your email servers they basically have good filter of logic bombs, so it's not very easy to send it everywhere. But yes, through pen drives and other storage devices, they can easily be transferred. Trojan horse, you know what Trojan horse is. Okay, obviously the name was given because of, you might have watched the movie Troy as well. Okay, so all these viruses, they hide themselves inside a particular program, and once the program is downloaded in any particular computer, one is laying down over there, then they will be able to get transmitted, and then they can basically do the job. Spyware, well, obviously, most of your key logging softwares, spyware, obviously, I mean, your information, your financial information could be spied. They just need some of your important credentials so that they can log into your accounts. So there are the multiple spyware softwares, key logging softwares that can be used to get your information, which means key logging software means that while I enter into a website and I enter my username and the password, mostly the banking websites, and if I'm going to enter my password, the key logging software will cache the keys that I'm entering. And if they're able to cache the keys, obviously they will know what I meant, what keys were used. So that's one of the best way to get someone username and the password. Okay, so spywares are another way to collect someone's information without someone knowing what's going on. Bots basically are used, or they're also known as admin bots. They're used to take control of someone's computer. Actually, okay, they try to get the admin rights of that particular computer so that they can install a software on their own, any application on their own. Okay, so these are basically known as bots, right? Why macro viruses? Because macros can also be created in application software such as Excel as well. Okay, someday if we have time, I can discuss it with you, but maybe not. Phishing, farming. You know what phishing is? Phishing is done through email, and for example, you get an email from someone. Okay, you might not authenticate it. For example, if you get an email from ci.org.pk, well, maybe many of the people will not even note that .pk, CI they don't have a domain by the name of .pk. They don't have an office in Pakistan. So if you get a message from there, you have to read the email address. You should know what the URL is. Is it authentic or not? Okay. Same case is with farming. Farming is relating to a website Okay, a malicious code is basically attached to a URL. So when you visit a URL, you are redirected to another website. For example, that's the way Facebook accounts are hacked. It's very easy to be done. All you have to do is just design a Facebook login page. It's so simply designed. You design that page 100% exactly the same thing. Okay, you upload it somewhere on your server. Okay, at the back end, you can use any key logging algorithm, and you just send a message to someone that email someone from Facebook dot whatever, a fake one, because your majority of the people don't even read the URL, and they are basically vulnerable to it. They are the one who become victim of all this. Why? Because people are not IT literate. Once they are not, they become the victim of it. They are more vulnerable to it. So what happens is, once they click on the link, they go to a web page that looks 100% just like a Facebook or any other banking whatever. Okay, fine. Now this is what happens. They enter the details and they click OK. Once they do so, they could be redirected to somewhere else and maybe say, sorry, could not log in. But that's not the point. The point is, you have entered your information and your information has gone into wrong hands. It's too late. So that the purpose of that particular website was not to make you log in with the authentic server. It was just to get you your credentials. So farming is related to websites. Phishing is related to emails. Okay, this is, and both are basically used to get someone's information. Is it clear, both of you? All of you, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Sure. Okay. Farming and phishing is very, very, very important. Okay, this is why frankly there is another thing that frankly everyone should know. We call it as CARS. It's known as credibility, accuracy, reliability and security. ठीक है, इसका मतलब क्या है? Well, being a CS student, आपको पता होना चाहिए इस बात का कि not all the information on the internet, on the digital media is right. 2 decades back, 3 decades back, when things were being printed, you could depend on them. Okay, you could actually authenticate कि ये information सही है. Now, since everyone is making websites and the content is not approved by any proper person who has an experience, so we just reading websites. For example, if we get an argument or on any particular topic, you will give your reference. Khatija will give you her reference. Magar then who knows who is using which reference and which reference is authentic? What would you say? Khadija would say, the reference that I am giving comes from an authentic person who has an experience of 23 years in this particular field. Okay, someone else says, okay, I have been referring to a person who does this as a part-time, but actually he is that. So when you talk about authenticity, you have to look at someone's qualification, you have to look at someone's experience. And if you look at these websites, they will always have credentials of people, of these writers, and when you click on them, their authenticity, their experience shows up, so you can actually trust it. Okay, so in case of medical websites, this is very, very important. It always comes from doctors and their experience in that particular field. So just talking about it, that credibility, accuracy is also very important. When you visit any particular website, obviously if you have a lot of spelling mistakes, you have numerical mistakes in that website, you're not visited again. You would say the content itself is wrong. Okay, there are lots of numerical issues, spelling mistakes. I will not trust the website or the content or whatever it is. Okay, so credibility, reliability, accuracy, security, how secure the website is. Okay, so these all are basically very, very, very important for for the authenticity of any content that comes from any particular place. Especially we're talking about websites or even social media, I could say. So system vulnerabilities, obviously, again, a typical thing. Malware can be introduced by attaching a portable storage device, opening an email attachment. Just talks about accessing a website, okay, or downloading a file from the internet. So we just talked about all this, right? This was your chapter 20. We will अभी start. अभी हमारे time खत्म होने वाला है. अगली क्लास में आई एम गोइंग टू स्टार्ट विद द नेक्स्ट चैप्टर व्हिच इज monitoring and control. I will not be able to complete the entire monitoring and control, मगर I will be able to explain you the logistics. इसको मैं जरा और elaborate ज़्यादा करूँगा, ठीक है, ज़्यादा elaborate करूँगा. We'll talk about the real-time processing. So I will use my own notes to explain you all this क्योंकि इसमें examples बहुत ज़रूरी हैं. Okay, then algorithm वगैरह ही हम फिर discuss करेंगे. So monitoring and control, yes, it's important for P3. ऐसे questions आते हैं काफी. So chapter 21 में बेटा anyone has any problem in any concept, आप please साथ साथ go through all this. Can you do it? Uh, I told you to go through the previous chapters. Did you go through it, all of you? Are you doing that?
Yes.
Please make your notes, make points. फिर जब हम मिलें स्कूल में we can discuss them. You start doing all that. Okay. As soon as we're done with this, there were 2 chapters left. वो करने के बाद I want to start with P3s. और स्कूल में हम P3 solve करेंगे. I'll solve at least 2 to 3 with you. 2 to 3 मैं आपको कहूँगा solve करने को. Then we start with P4 very soon. That's the way this will go. P3 हमारा इंशाल्लाह जल्दी. I believe in couple of classes हम P3 पेपर भी solve करना शुरू कर लेंगे. Not bad.
सर P2 कब करेंगे?
मैं पता है कि बेटा नो प्रॉब्लम, मैं P2 करा दूंगा. मैं आपको P4 पहले करा दूंगा. P4 is the most toughest one. P1 and P2 are relatively obviously yes level है. P1 P2 are easy. P3 and P4 are tough. आपको पता है P1 and P2 में तो A grade आया था. P3 and P4 है जिसमें मसला ज्यादा होता है. आपको पता है इस बात का? वैसे बाय द वे वैसे ऑब्वियसली पता होगा. यू डू नो के AS लेवल और A लेवल में फर्क क्या होता है. AS लेवल इज P1 एंड P2. सो व्हाट डू यू वांट के मैं P3 के बाद P2 एक बार रिवाइज कर दूं फिर P4 कर लें? दिस इज व्हाट यू वांट? हाँ
सर आई गेस सबसे
नहीं,
पूछ लें.
डज एवरीवन वांट दैट? या हम यूं कर लेते हैं ना, हम यूं नहीं करते. हम यूं कर लेते हैं कि हमारी जो नंबर ऑफ क्लासेस है ना, मैं एक क्लास P2 को दे दूंगा और मैं बाकी क्लासेस P4 को दे दूंगा. We'll go side by side. I can't give, let's say, 2 weeks to 3 weeks to P2 again. I want to like finish the syllabus and we can do the revision and the pass and the paper session हम जल्दी start कर लें. मैं ये साथ चाह रहा हूँ. So मैं एक क्लास दे दिया करूंगा P2 को और बाकी 2 क्लास में दे दिया करूंगा P4 को. Is this fine? That's the way we can go.
Okay.
फिर आपको जब बस मैनेज करना पड़ेगा बिकॉज हम डिफरेंट चीजें पढ़ रहे होंगे. यू हैव टू मैनेज. मैं स्टार्ट कर लूंगा. आफ्टर डूइंग दिस आई विल स्टार्ट P2 अगेन. ठीक है, कर लेते हैं. यू फाइन? ऑल ऑफ यू एग्री? इज इट फाइन वे?
Yes, sir.